Hi, my name is Bonnie Goss, and I am the head of communications for Skellig Automation. Today, I am here with our CEO and founder, Paul O'Sullivan. How are you doing today, Paul?
Good. How are you buying?
I'm wonderful, thank you.
Excellent.
So, I wanted to get together with you today just to kind of talk to you about how you founded Skellig and what your inspiration was. Because, in general, I think that you draw a lot of inspiration from where you've been in the past, other companies that you've worked for. Probably one of the first questions that should be asked in this case is, why did you start Skellig Automation?
Thanks. I've been asked it a few times, and it's typically the same answer because it's the best version. It's what I consider the truth, and it was out of a motivation, honestly, to sort out a couple of engineers. That's the wording I'd put around it. And what we wanted to do was try to get into better scenarios, cleaner scenarios that seem to have less complexity between the engineer and the problem. And it's no fault of anyone's previous company or anything like that. Things are just the way they are, and life science is a very stable kind of industry, and that's where we were. But when you look at like the engineer in the purest sense, in terms of like a great engineer trying to focus on a problem, I just found myself being attracted to the problem of like how would you how would you enable that engineer to be part of a team where they moved information in a better fashion. They had more access to the truth. They had more context of the problem. You took away maybe some of the things that were really pissing them off, that put them in the scenario, and then you try to work on that. Did we ever set out to be perfect, or are we perfect? Absolutely not. But can we chip away at what we understand the problem to be, and could we build a better team? It's just worthy work, and it's what I enjoy doing, because starting and growing a business is very, very difficult. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but then it kind of compounds in difficulty if you want to try to experiment to do something where you're trying to ask original questions, difficult, bothersome questions. But it was a worthy effort. Um, a big turning point for Skellig for sure, and for myself, was kind of when Jennifer Jones joined the company, and working with her and kind of just broadening the thinking around, could we solve this problem a different way? And the problem we set out was to try to design a culture that encouraged more collaboration, communication, broke down more barriers, gave people more context and information on the work that they had, and then try to scale that in a way where we figured out how to stand for something that we collectively believed in. And that's the stuff it's not easy, but it's the rewarding work where you close the laptop at the end of every day and you're like, fuck it, I tried anyway, and I tried to move the ball forward. And I could do this for a very long time because I enjoy working on this problem. I enjoy the problem of how do you take a team of engineers, work on the things that could help that team collaborate better, perform better. And it's a joy to get to work on the problem of, if someone's a great engineer and they went to college to be an engineer and their passion is engineering work, what could you do to help great engineers do great work? And that's the joy of the problems we get presented with every day, the challenges. And yeah, I love it. But that's why I started it. I like to say I was never the best engineer. I'm not great with detail oriented work, kind of good big picture, but I love the problem of culture and how people collaborate, and I like learning about that. So I like to explore that topic and try to apply what I learn in the day to day. So
Yeah,
that's it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Just having spoken to you over the years, as a side note, I have worked here for about 2.5 years now.
Mhm.
So when I started here, I was a validation engineer, but before that, I was an engineering manager for a different firm. When I was
Mhm.
at that firm, I started looking for another job in the middle of COVID. I got a call from a recruiter who connected me with you. And I had a phone call with you that lasted 35 minutes, and I quit my job. after that phone call, and I started working for you immediately. I believed very strongly in the vision when I spoke to you, and a lot of it was because of the way you talked about culture and the way you really wanted to build something a little different within an industry that is, traditionally it looks a very certain way.
Mhm.
Um, However, I think that, it's been what, 14 years now since you founded Skellig. It was in 2010,
Yep,
right?
yep, yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that's 14 years. That's a lot of time to make mistakes. So, what do you wish that you had done differently for any reason, really?
I look, I've made a lot of mistakes. You know, the things you regret the most are the things where you don't think through the problem enough from someone else's perspective, and you end up hurting someone else either inadvertently. Like I haven't, most of the big mistakes I feel like from a business perspective has been things like maybe doing a poor job at like um, installing infrastructure operationally in time for scale. That was, I think, one of the larger learnings. It's very exciting. I love talking to new engineers. I remember that conversation with you, but I had a lot of those and I loved them all. It's really nice to get the chance to try to help someone else. And if you see someone trying, they want a chance to do great work. It's just really nice to be able to be in a position where you might be able to give them a chance to make to give them that shot, and then they do great work, and then you get associated with that great work, then the customer comes back. And that's why I'm getting to answer your question. Sorry, I know you asked about mistakes, but like when you think about like a lot of around Skellig, we try to put the engineer first. Now we expect the engineer to act like an adult, and you have adult behavior that you expect. But in general, putting the engineer first has been our business strategy, because if you reverse engineer the problem, and our best original thinking on it has been, if you have great engineers and they're well set up to help solve a problem, then you've got a very potent problem solving machine. And that's what clients want. They don't want, no client comes like, I just want Skellig. I don't care who you give me on my project. I just want Skellig. Paul O'Sullivan can pick someone and that's fine. They deeply care about the criteria of like, do you have a good organization that has a track record of solving problems? Can I trust your organization? And then who are you giving me that's going to implement um, the solution you're going to help design for me? They deeply care about who you give them. So that's why being focusing on the engineer first, I think, is a really good idea from a business perspective. Because if you do have not just a great engineer, but also you work to create an ecosystem where that engineer can be effective. And I think where I've fallen short of that, that's where I would consider the biggest business mistakes. As in, anytime you didn't set that engineer up for success, you took your eye off the ball and prioritize the client, and then you messed up. Those would be for me, the big mistakes. And I think when COVID started, we scaled very rapidly as a company,
Yes.
and it was brilliant bringing in a lot of great engineers. But I think if that would be the big one, that if I had to do it again, I think I would try to be more operationally ready for that. And I think those engineers then would have had a cleaner experience. Um,
Yeah.
but in general, I'm learning all the time too, and I feel like the next stage of Skellig now is trying to understand how to be a good I'm trying to understand how to be a good CEO that has a team that does the job I used to do, and they're doing it better. But how do you support them, and how do you be part of that ecosystem and play a part role? So I'm trying to do a good job at learning how to do that well.
Yeah, and
Um,
I think that's a big shift, especially for you, having worked with you, and seeing how that you solve problems. You like to get your hands dirty. You like to really be down
I
there.
love
You
it.
like to
Yeah,
be in meetings, solving the problems with the
yeah.
rest of the engineers. And as a CEO, you can't do that, or you'll never get the big picture stuff done.
No, that's the problem. Yeah, and
Mhm.
it's not, and trying to do that in a way that's respectful of engineers, where they don't
Yes.
feel dismissed or like, oh, Paul doesn't have time for me anymore. I get he's too big for his boots now. It's not that. It's kind of trying to kind of no, we need to get the mechanism right. But a lot of
Yeah.
what's helped get the mechanism right is getting feedback from the engineers of what's going well and what's not. But also the managers are trying to do a great job too. And honestly, the hardest job I think in any company is being in some kind of middle management role where you've got a boss and you've got people you're trying to help as well. That's quite, I have a lot of admiration for people that take on and try to do that, hard work every day. I have very little regrets, but I do wish I'd kind of learned about the Toyota way and W. Edwards Deming a little sooner and tried to apply it a little sooner. But like we have developed like this Skellig way now and trying to give management a chance, but also trying to give those engineers a set of expectations of this is how management's going to act. This is the rules this is what they're trying to do for you. This is what's expected of you. And if we all do our part, it should be a really great experience. But context for engineers, whereas without that context, you're really dependent on the manager's personality. And, that's one of those big cultural things, right? For as companies scale, oh, you don't leave the company, you leave your manager, right? Um, but how do you create something that could scale well where there's a level set expectation on what's a Skellig way of working and what's not a Skellig way of working, and that hopefully helps de-stress management and also set expectations with engineers around what they could expect. And when they don't see what they expect, they have an escalation strategy. Beyond a couple of little boops like that, I don't really have any major regrets. It's been a great learning experience.
You're also one of those great engineers doing great work. You're enabling yourself to do what you want your people to do as well.
That's right. I'm trying to engineer the culture.
Well, that's just as important. It's like I
Mhm.
know that whenever I was getting ready to start our podcast, that I tossed around a bunch of ideas. And one of my original iterations was I wanted to talk to people in the industry and ask them why they quit their job, like why they quit their last job, because it's really almost always it's cultural. And that's
Yep.
it'll get you every time. It's why I quit my last job. And I think it's why I quit every other job in my career, actually.
Yeah. Well, as people grow and learn too, they change. But yeah, we also have an industry that's very, white male dominated. So also trying to create a space for more women, more minorities. Can we weave in some sustainable ways that are respectful, not just kind of oh, we've got a diversity box and we ticked that. Great, good job,
Yeah,
lads. You know.
yeah, absolutely. Let's, change tack a little bit. So we've talked about the mistakes.
Okay.
What do you feel have been some of your greatest investments of time, investments of money, some of the best things that you've done for Skellig along the way?
The best things I've done. I don't know. I think I think we got lucky with some early hires. In the beginning, I did the invoicing and the other stuff, but then I brought in Podrig. And if anyone is thinking about starting a company and they're like, I think focusing on what you're great at is often advice you will hear, but can be really hard to think about how would I actually apply it, because when you're dirt poor and you're trying to connect, you're trying to rub two pennies together to make payroll, you don't have a lot of flexibility with who you can do. But trying to honestly stay focused on offloading the stuff that you're not great at to people who are very good at that sort of stuff, that's a really good use of your time and your focus as a leader, I think. I feel like my general job now is recruiting, and I think that is the strength. I think that's the thing I'm most proud of is um, trying to be involved in recruiting. I do love that side of the business. I also love problems. I love big problems because they just present a chance, and I love the problems where they didn't blow up yet, but someone had the fortitude to speak up and say something's not quite right. And I love being able to try to put myself in a position where you could give that a bit of space and air. You try to solve it early, and the stitch in time saves nine, as they say. So I love doing that. But I think what I got lucky at, you know, just trying to absorb business leaders that I admired, and kind of picked up early that like handing off stuff you're not great at is a really good idea, for safety and success and scalability. And I think I did an okay job I did a pretty good job at picking people. Got very lucky, kind of accidentally, with Jennifer Jones, I think, who became this like kind of core of how decisions are made within the company in terms of cultural scalability. But I stayed and worked in very closely with the engineers on the tactical level. Tried. We worked on the core design then together of like what would actually scale well, that would take care of people, that would, open it up to, other classes of people or other categories, more so than just like, the white male dominated khakis wearing polo shirt and khakis people, which, you see a lot of, and bring more solutions to the table. And that's been huge. Like a lot of uh, like women leaders within the company have smoothed over some of the more difficult problems. They've added massive amount of context and provided huge amounts of value to the decision making capability of the team. I think, adding Podrick, Jennifer, and then we brought on Mary internally. We had a ton of great engineers early, and like Kedar, Pernindu, that are still with us, Eamon, you name it, you go down the list. There's a lot of like really strong, talented engineers that, um, you know, what they stayed, but they also provided feedback and helped influence. So I also would give this advice: if you share your intentions with your team, sometimes they can really help you. Like, yeah, dude, that's not going to work out the way you think it is. That's going to be a disaster. And you're like, oh, hold on a second, and then you kind of double click in, and maybe you learn something. So I think doing that would be good advice. And I think I got lucky that I took that approach, and that helped.
Whenever you started Skellig, did you anticipate it would be this much work?
No, no, and it does help to be a little bit delusional. So for sure, definitely delusional. Underestimate the difficulty. Is if you're very logical, you wouldn't do this, because there's better ways to. But in terms of creating a space for permission to solve a problem, and then get permission to solve a larger problem, it's hard to beat trying to go off and start something. The problem with it is it does look a lot easier than it actually is, and it takes a lot longer. Like a lot of people, maybe you're hearing about Skellig now and stuff like that, but we've been at this for 14 years, and growing slowly and steadily. It's been a quite enough kind of climb, but the market's changing now, and
It is.
you look at like 4.0 and the technologies, and we're kind of fresh enough to be able to adapt that new mindset. Whereas if we had a lot heavier success maybe earlier with, not that we didn't have success, but I mean in terms of like, I think it's going to be quite the unraveling for some of the older school approaches to how you're going to find success in this new landscape, because it's quite different. Knowledge is not power anymore. You can't hoard it. You got to share it out. You got to be as authentic as you can publicly. You got to be pretty transparent. You can't just like put a proposal with a big sticker price at the bottom. You got to break it out and build trust. There's a lot new and different. I know that's not quite what you asked me. Sorry, so I'll stop there. But it's a very interesting time, and I think I feel quite fortunate that we have a lot of fresh perspectives within Skellig, and I think we're able to, look at the landscape and respond with a good bit of agility.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing is all that time is worth it.
It is, but you have to love it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it otherwise. It's just really just not. So like if you're doing it for the money, um, you could do it for the money, right? And you could do it that way. If that's your goal, just be honest with yourself.
Mhm.
and try to get as big as possible, as quick as possible, I guess, and sell out then as and have an easy life for yourself. That's fine. That's not what we're trying to do here. What we're trying to do is perfect the craft of managing an engineering team. Because like, yeah, Skellig, we're trying to do 4.0 systems integration now. We did a good job at getting some great engineers in the door. Now we're trying to solve larger problems. Beyond that, like we want to solve larger problems again, so keep double clicking back and out and go beyond engineers. And how do you enable a HR professional or a scientist to do great work?
Yeah.
Because there's plenty of scientific and engineering setups and activities that leave a lot to be desired when it comes to culture. And I'm not just talking about like diversity inclusion. I'm just talking about genuine, straightforward fairness around
Yeah.
how an engineer or a scientist emerges from college and has the best chance possible at doing great work for the company they're trying to do work for. A
Yeah.
lot of it's, trying to wrangle your way through bullshit and red tape to get to the actual work. Um, and that's a worthy problem that I hope to get permission to continue to work on. The other thing too that I do like to acknowledge is that I only have this job because a couple of engineers decided they would come work for Skellig, and
Yeah.
I don't want to ever kind of forget that. And that even as it scales, it's really just a vote because people do have a choice. They could work anywhere they want to. And if they choose to work at Skellig for a part of their career, it's a real honor and a privilege to have them here. And, you know, I don't want to ever lose sight of that or forget that.
Absolutely. So, how do you personally now? I know that you have a family. You're
Yep.
married. You have kids.
Uh-huh.
So, how do you separate working
Uh,
so much? How do you keep that separate?
yeah, it's difficult at times, but, especially since having kids, a lot of demands in the evening and weekends and stuff. So pretty much, I do process problems mentally on the evenings and weekends, but in general, I try to create as much downtime as possible. Usually, try to finish work five
Yeah.
5:30, that kind of ballpark. Go have an evening. The other thing too is like 8 hours of truly, or 9 to 10 hours of truly focused, concentrated, hard stuff, you do need to rest and recover. You do need to reset, so that you can do a good next 8 to 10 hours.
Yeah, and I
Sort of
seem to
goal.
recall that for you, you always try to be home for bedtime
Oh yeah, I've
with
been
your
traveling.
kids.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just do some crazy stuff like leave at a crazy hour in the morning and then get back. Yeah, yeah. I avoid staying over anywhere. Yeah, if I can. I think it's important because if I set the expectation, oh, you travel for work, you have to do right by the company and blah 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 blah, and it also, I'm hoping that like by me doing it, it also does set or give the space for other leaders, maybe moms and stuff like that, to feel
Mhm.
like, okay, you could exist at this company, and there's a precedent where you're not going to lose out or be less in line for promotion because you have a family and commitments outside of work. One of the things I think we're trying to make sure we live by is that, like, like the context of it is like, look, we all have lives, and work's part of your life, but it's a third of it. That's about it, and then the rest of it is you being a human being, and you should have a chance to do that.
Yeah,
So.
absolutely. I know that working here has felt very human. Just working with other people. I'm not a parent myself, but I work with a lot of parents. We have a lot of parents at Skellig, and
Mhm.
everyone. It's very clear that everyone puts family first, and it's obvious that you can do that and still do that great work. And in fact, it enables you to do better at work because you have
Yeah.
maybe you feel better about how you are at home.
Yeah. Do you ever think? 'Cause I do know from being in some other cultures like that, or seeing some other cultures as well, where it's like, oh, we're a family at work. And it's like, geez, it's always bullshit when
No.
you dive into it because it usually just means you're going to guilt someone into working a lot of extra hours. And
Yes.
then the old joke of like, well, people like at this company, they like to keep pictures of their family at their desk because that's the only chance they get to see them. And you're like,
Yeah.
oh God, yeah. It's just
I
like, there's got
remember
to be a better way.
I wrote a blog at some point. It was the people talking about, work, your work family being your family, or being a
Hmm.
family at all. And I was like, I don't talk to my family. I don't want, that's not something that anyone wants to be associated with, as
Yeah,
far as I'm concerned. So it's really interesting. And it's actually been kind of freeing here to understand that no one's trying to be your family at Skellig. We're trying to be your coworkers. We're trying to be, we
yeah,
do have some friendships. I've definitely made friends while working here. And I do genuinely, I know that people are fighting for people to be able to have their families. I see the work that Jennifer Jones puts in, just making sure that we do hold that up first, is making sure that everyone does have that balance. Everyone
yeah,
can do that for themselves.
yeah. And being clear about that too has kind of been helpful from a, because the analogy is kind of, it is like a team sport, and it's,
Absolutely.
as the projects get bigger and the stakes get higher, there's you need high performing individuals, and like, you know I don't know. I don't know if I like the analogy A players and all that kind of stuff, because it takes
Yeah.
quite a diverse group to make a great team. But collaboration, I think, is like hella important here, and trying to support each other, and that's a team mentality. And I think if I think the right approach is to try to build a great team, and not try to leverage any kind of family type stuff or anything like that. But
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever you were founding Skellig, what other business leaders did you look to for inspiration? So who did you look for cultural inspiration, anything like that?
yeah, Simon Sinek would be
Hmm.
a business author that tried to, you know, he was a heavy influence. Charlie Munger, who died earlier this year, Warren Buffett's business partner, he's always been someone I try to absorb as much as possible from. And then a range of others that you take bits and pieces from, like
Yeah.
Steve Jobs was amazing. Um, Musk, in some capacities, is phenomenal. Like in terms of what he's done with Tesla and stuff like that, it's
Hmm.
pretty cool. The Toyota way then is like this overarching thing. Um, W. Edwards Deming, most boring book you'll ever read, like real hard stuff. Oh Jesus! But like, is there a lot of that that's stuck in the back of my head? Absolutely. Um, and then I think Jim Collins, the business author, he wrote like Good to Great, Beyond Entrepreneurship, stuff like that. Those are very, very good foundational books. But in general, there's a lot you can learn from everyone, or a lot of people that have had some level of success.
And everyone succeeds in a different way too. And to be truly successful, you have to, you have to pull from those inspirations and then carve your own path
Yeah,
away from them while using what you can.
yeah. Because someone asked me this a couple of years ago, and I was like, "Huh, it's a lot of old stodgy white guys." I'm like, "Yeah, it is," but I don't know. But I think there is new ideas, and there's fresher ideas, and I think in 100 years there's going to be a lot of different heroes um,
Mm,
for people trying to start something and understand how to be effective.
yeah, absolutely.
But
Um,
we're still benefiting from what, companies that were started in the 80s, the 90s, that kind of territory. It's not quite.
yeah. What are your major like long-term goals for Skellig moving forward? Uh, Both for as the company as a whole and for yourself.
Yeah. For myself, I just want to stay involved in building engineering teams, trying to understand how how people work together, how to enable teams to do cooler things. And I know it's going to sound like a bullshit generic answer, but it's actually the truth. And then I can try to back out to more specifics. But honestly, if you look behind the hood, I actually don't really care what we technically do. I just care that the engineers love it and that they're working as part of a team to do it. That's what I care about first. But most people don't like that answer. So it's like, okay, well, technically, I want to see us doing more 4.0 stuff. I
Sure.
want to see us bring that mindset and that technology into life sciences so we can effectively help to lower the cost of medication by lowering the cost of manufacturing and broaden that accessibility. There's huge problems with cell and gene therapy. Lots and lots of like OEM pieces of equipment with proprietary automation on top of it. It
Yeah.
just drives me nuts that factories make that decision over and over again. We'll put a wrapper around it. I'm like, please don't stop doing that. There's so much single use out there that like it's maturing now, and there's got to be some new questions asked around like, could we go back to steel tanks? Could we create more flexibility? Are there new materials that would be more cost effective, less
Hmm.
detrimental to the environment? Um, are we really getting the flexibility we thought we would be getting from these single use pieces of equipment? Um, and then beyond life sciences, like general engineering problems, like there's a lot to be tackled. But no matter what the technical challenge is, there's nothing that would delight me more than being helping to build the stage for some great engineers to perform on it in whatever they were super passionate about. And when I say engineers, I can see that changing over time. To I'd like to learn about scientists and other types of kooky people. It's fun to see someone at a whiteboard trying to solve a problem,
Yeah.
and I love to be trying to think about how could I how could I get them what they need to do that really well.
Yeah.
That's the stuff I hope to get to work on for the next 30 years or so.
I think that fits really well with generally what I've seen of Skellig, and also like just the general vision of if
Mm.
you want to make medicine more accessible for people, you need to make the profession itself more accessible to people so that more people are
You
able to
do,
come into it. It's not such a rare skill. It needs to be brought down a
yeah.
little bit more accessible in every way.
I don't know. I hate. I think I forget who's used. Someone said it recently. Oh, I hate the generation generalization. But
Hmm.
someone said that recently. But
It was me.
I kind of it was, yeah. I do too, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. But if you do look at like people are growing up these days with like tablets and iPhones, and you're
Hmm.
used to solving your problem, and then you walk into these facilities and you can't get access to data, you can't solve your own problem, you're not
Yeah.
empowered. There's really fundamental problems that we know how to solve, but we don't solve them because we haven't kind of gotten out of our own way. Those are like big, juicy, meaty problems to me. I love it, and
Yeah.
um, it's just very exciting to get to work on that.
Well, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. And
Thanks for
I
asking.
hope everyone has enjoyed listening to me talk to Paul today. If you have any questions that you would like to see me ask Paul in the future, our contact information is going to be below. And I think that'll be it for today. So thank you so much, Paul, and
Thanks,
I'll
bye.
talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Bye now.
All right. Bye.